Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. And today we are taking on a topic that I am pretty sure we can all relate to at some point.
Oh, yeah?
In our dating lives.
Yeah, definitely.
And it was actually suggested by one of our listeners, so shout out to you for suggesting this because I think it's a great one.
Absolutely.
And that is basically...
What does it mean?
What does it really mean?
When someone says...
When someone says, I'm not ready for a relationship.
Oh, that's a loaded one.
It is, and it's so frustrating, right? Because it's like, okay, what does that even mean? Like, what are you trying to say? So we are going to be looking at an article today called The Not Ready Conundrum, Navigating the Situation with Confidence.
Ooh, I like that.
And of course, expert speaker is here to break it all down with us.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here.
Are you ready to dive in?
Let's do it.
Okay, so the article starts off by kind of breaking down why someone might say they're not ready. And it's kind of interesting because it's not always what you think. Like sometimes you might think, oh, they're just not that into me or whatever. But the article really digs a lot deeper than that.
It does.
And one of the things that I found really interesting was that fear of vulnerability.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Plays a big role.
Absolutely.
I think we can all relate to that.
Right.
Especially if we've had some, negative experiences in the past.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, when someone's been hurt before, opening themselves up to a new relationship is kind of scary.
Yeah.
Right? It's like they're stepping back into a place where they experienced pain before, so not ready.
Yeah.
Might be less about you and more about them trying to protect themselves.
Totally, yeah. Like, I'm still, building up my walls here.
Exactly.
Give me a minute.
Yeah. And it's a good reminder that everyone's coming at the table with their own baggage.
Yes.
Right? And some people have, bigger suitcases than others.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
That's true. And that kind of leads into another reason that the article talks about, which is past trauma.
Right. And that can be huge.
Yeah, it's not even just about a bad breakup. It could be deeper wounds.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That someone is, still kind of working through.
Yeah.
And it takes time to heal from those things.
It does. And it's not linear.
No.
There's ups and downs.
For sure.
And what I find fascinating is that the article suggests that not ready can actually be a sign of self-awareness.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right. Because it means the person is actually acknowledging that they need to work through some things before they can fully be present and, engaged in a relationship.
Wow. So it's almost like a good sign in a way.
It can be.
Instead of...
As opposed to just jumping into something and then, crashing and burning.
Yeah, or not even realizing that they have these issues.
Exactly.
They're just kind of going through life,
Yeah, yeah.
So it's actually a good sign that they're at least aware. Okay, so we've got the fear of vulnerability. We've got the past trauma that people might be working through. But the article also says that sometimes not ready.
Sometimes it's much simpler than that.
Yeah.
It's just uncertainty.
Right.
They just don't know.
Yeah, they're not sure how they feel.
They don't know how they feel, and that's okay.
It's fine.
It's okay to not know.
Oh, totally. I think that's a good point because we always want to have the answers right away, but sometimes
you just got to sit with it.
Yeah.
And figure it out.
So it's like, I need some time to process what this means for me.
Exactly.
What this means for us.
Yeah. And rushing that process isn't good for anybody.
No, not at all.
Right. Like, let's let things unfold organically.
Totally.
And, see where things go.
And then the last thing that the article talks about is this whole idea of
external pressure.
External pressure.
Yeah.
Which can be huge, I think, especially
huge.
today's society. There's so much pressure to have a career, to have a relationship, to
have it all figured out.
To have it all figured out. And it's like, whoa, slow down.
Right. Like, when are we supposed to sleep?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah. So sometimes it's just that they're feeling overwhelmed with everything else that's going on.
Absolutely. And it's like they're just not ready to add another layer to the cake.
Totally. So it's not even really about you.
Sometimes.
Just them and where they're at.
Exactly.
Okay, so before we get into how to deal with this whole not ready situation, because I'm sure a lot of us are sitting here like, okay,
I get it.
But now what?
Now what do I do?
Like, what do I do with this information? We have to understand, hearing those words, I'm not ready.
It triggers something.
It can?
It can be a lot.
Yeah. It's not fun.
No, it's not exactly like the best thing to hear.
It's not what you want to hear.
Especially if you're really into someone.
Yeah. And the article actually talks about the fallout.
Yeah.
in the fact that, like, it's normal to feel confused, frustrated.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, if there was a connection and now suddenly
Ready to go.
it's gone. Like, what happened?
Yeah.
Was it all in my head?
And so then you start to,
Spiral.
get anxious and
Self-doubt creeps in.
self-doubt for sure.
Yeah, and all those things are totally valid to feel.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's natural to feel that way.
It's a normal human response.
Yeah, so you're not alone if you're, feeling all those things.
Yeah, you're not weird.
And it's that uncertainty, right? Like,
sure.
not knowing.
The unknown is scary.
Yeah, you're just like in this weird limbo.
Totally.
You're not together, but you're not apart.
And you don't know what to do.
Yeah, and you don't know how to move forward.
Right.
Okay, so now that we've kind of established...
Laid the ground.
Yeah, laid the groundwork. Like, what does this all mean?
Right.
The big question is like, okay, how do we handle it?
How do we deal?
Because let's be real, like...
It's going to happen.
It's probably going to happen to most of us at some point.
At some point, yeah.
So...
we need a plan.
We need a game plan.
Right.
And luckily, the article gives us one.
It does. It lays it all out for us.
Yeah, it does. It actually gives us some strategies for navigating...
the not ready maze.
this whole not ready maze.
It's a maze.
Yeah.
It is.
So let's take a look at those and kind of unpack what we can do.
Awesome.
So the first one is communicate openly and honestly.
Okay.
Which sounds simple enough.
It does.
But I have a feeling it's a little more complicated than it sounds, especially
when you're emotional.
When you're like in it, and you're feeling all these feelings.
Yeah, it's hard to be rational.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do we actually do that? Like, what does that look like?
So it really comes down to, not just like barging in there.
And saying what you want to say.
Right.
But actually listening to the other person.
Like active listening.
Active listening.
Yeah.
Asking clarifying questions. Really trying to see their perspective.
Not just pushing for what you want.
No, because it's not all about you.
Right.
Right? It's about understanding where they're coming from.
So instead of saying like, but I want this and I want this and I want this.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, help me understand.
Help me understand where you're at.
Where you're at and why you're feeling this way.
Right.
And I feel like that could go a long way, even if it's uncomfortable.
Oh, absolutely.
To have that conversation.
Absolutely, because it creates that space for open dialogue.
Totally. Right.
Where both people feel heard
and
respected.
Okay, so that's a good starting point.
Yeah.
And speaking of respect, the next strategy is all about respecting their boundaries.
That's a big one.
Yeah. Which is super important. But again,
also can be tricky.
Like, how do we do that?
Yeah, especially when feelings are involved.
It's tough.
Yeah.
It's about, finding that balance between being there for someone, but also giving them the space that they need.
It's like if they say, I need time to think.
Don't pull up their phone.
Right.
Right? Like, let them have their space.
No texting every 5 minutes.
Exactly. Don't stalk them on social media.
Yeah, exactly. All of those things.
Right.
So it's like, trust that they'll reach out when they're ready.
Trust is key.
It's hard, though.
It is. It's hard. It is. But it's like you're saying.
But it shows maturity.
Yeah.
And it builds trust.
So it's almost like saying, I trust you enough.
Yeah.
To
honor your needs.
To honor your needs, even though it's hard for me.
Even though I want to talk to you every 5 minutes.
Okay. So communication.
Yes.
And boundaries.
Huge.
Huge.
Those are the pillars.
And the last one that we're going to talk about in this section is
self-improvement.
Focus on self-improvement.
Yes, which I love because it's almost like taking this situation and turning it into something positive.
Turning lemons into lemonade.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Like instead of feeling like stuck and helpless.
Powerless.
It's like, okay.
I'm going to use this time.
What can I control?
What can I control?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's me.
Yeah.
Myself.
Yeah.
How do we do that?
So again, it's very individual.
Right.
Right? Like, what are your goals?
Yeah.
What are your passions?
Yeah.
What have you been putting off?
Yeah. Like, is there a hobby you've been wanting to try?
Exactly.
Or a class you've been wanting to take?
Take a class.
Yeah.
Or travel. Read a book.
Yeah. Reconnect with friends.
Anything that brings you joy.
Yes.
Right?
It's like you get so caught up in the other person and the relationship that you kind of forget about yourself.
And your own needs.
Yeah.
And your own dreams.
And this is a perfect time to kind of recenter. And be like, wait a minute.
What about me?
Yeah, what do I want? So it's
good.
It's like a blessing in disguise almost.
It can be.
It
can be.
Okay, so we've talked about the reasons behind not ready.
Right.
We've talked about the emotional craziness.
The roller coaster.
Yeah, the roller coaster that ensues.
Yeah.
We've talked about respecting boundaries, communicating.
Self-improvement.
Self-improvement. Like, are there any other, like,
nuggets of wisdom.
Nuggets from this article that we should be aware of?
You know, one thing that really resonated with me was this idea of open communication, like from the get-go.
Oh, from the beginning.
From the very beginning.
Yeah.
Of any relationship.
So not even just when someone says, I'm not ready.
No, no, no.
But like from the very first date.
From date one.
Date one.
Be upfront.
Be honest.
About your intentions.
Yeah.
Your expectation.
Right? Your needs.
Your needs.
Yeah.
And encourage the other person to do the same.
Which can be scary.
It can be.
Because it's like we're so used to playing games.
We are. We're taught to play it cool.
Yeah.
Right.
But the article's saying like
authenticity.
Real.
Vulnerability.
Yeah.
Those are powerful.
And maybe then we'll prevent some of these situations.
Maybe.
From happening in the first place.
Right. If everyone's on the same page from the beginning.
So less heartbreak.
Less heartbreak.
Less confusion.
Less ghosting.
Less ghosting.
Yeah.
So it's like just lay it all out there.
Put it on the table.
Yeah, even if it's messy.
Even if it's a little scary.
Okay, so clear communication.
Yes.
Boundaries and
self-awareness.
Self-awareness.
Yeah.
Okay, so listeners.
Yeah.
I want you to think about like what has resonated with you the most so far.
Yeah.
You know, what are you taking away from this conversation?
What are your insights?
We're going to take a quick break
Yes.
and we'll be back with part 2.
More. To unpack all this even more.
Stay tuned.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to our deep dive, everybody.
I am so glad we're continuing this conversation.
Me too.
Because I think a lot of people are probably thinking, okay, this is all great in theory, but what does this actually look like?
In real life.
In real life.
Yeah.
Like, how do we actually respect boundaries? How do you actually
do the self-improvement thing?
The self-improvement,
right.
It's one thing to say it,
Yeah.
but it's another to actually do it.
To put it into practice. So let's break it down.
So break it down. Okay, so respecting boundaries.
That's a big one.
Like, how do we actually do that?
So it really boils down to honoring the other person's need for space.
Yeah.
Right? Like physically and emotionally.
So if they say they need time to themselves,
you give it to them. You don't bombard them.
You don't text
with texts and calls.
Yeah. You don't try to like sneakily find out what they're doing.
No stalking.
Yeah, no stalking. So it's basically like, okay, I trust that you will reach out when you're ready.
When you're ready.
Yeah.
And that's hard.
It is.
Because you want to know what's going on.
Right, but you got to resist.
Resist the urge.
Resist the urge, yeah.
And while you're resisting the urge and giving them their space,
it's the perfect time.
That's when the self-improvement comes in.
For self-improvement, which, let's be honest,
it can be a little bit of a mixed bag.
Sometimes you just want to wallow.
Yeah.
You know?
You want to just like,
sit on the couch.
Yeah. Eat ice cream.
Yeah.
Watch sad movies.
But this article's saying, no.
No.
Use this as an opportunity.
An opportunity, yeah.
Yeah. To like...
To better yourself.
Yeah, and like almost like this not ready situation can be like a catalyst for growth.
Absolutely.
Right away.
Yeah, forces you to look inward.
Yeah.
Right? And like, who am I?
Yeah, what are my goals?
What are my passions?
What do I want?
What do I want out of life?
Instead of being so focused
not the other person?
On them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like this shift from feeling powerless
yes
to feeling empowered.
I love that.
Right. Like, I can do this.
Yeah.
I can take control.
It's a beautiful thing.
So what are some actual practical things we can do?
Ways to self-improve.
To self-improve.
So again, it's totally up to you.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what are your
needs?
Your needs, your passions, your goals.
Is there a hobby you've been putting off?
Exactly.
Like, I've always wanted to learn how to knit.
Learn how to knit? Like a cooking class?
Yeah.
I don't know. Whatever it is for you.
Or maybe it's like career focused.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Uh-huh.
Like maybe there's a certification you've been wanting to get.
Yeah.
Or, you want to learn a new skill.
Yeah, or just like reconnect with friends.
Oh, yeah. Spend time with loved ones.
Yeah, because we get so caught up in the romance.
You do.
That we forget about
all the other important relationships.
Yeah, all the other amazing people in our lives.
Absolutely.
And so this is a good time to nurture those.
Nurture those, yeah.
So it's like this not ready thing is actually like a blessing.
It can be.
In disguise.
A blessing in disguise.
Okay, so we've got the reasons behind not ready.
Yeah.
You've got the emotional fallout.
Right.
We've got respecting boundaries, communicating self-improvement.
Are there any other,
Anything else?
golden nuggets
Golden nuggets.
from this article that we should,
Yeah, that we should highlight.
Yeah.
For our listeners.
You know, one thing that stood out to me was
Yeah.
open and honest communication from the start.
From the beginning?
From the very beginning.
Of any relationship.
Of any relationship.
So not even just when someone's like, I'm not ready.
No. This is
Date one.
date one.
We're sitting down and
Oh, hey.
this is what's up.
This is what's up. This is what I'm looking for. This is what I'm not looking for.
Yeah, which can be scary
It is scary.
to be that vulnerable.
It is vulnerable.
Right away.
But it's powerful.
Yes.
Because you're basically saying hey, I'm being real with you.
Yeah.
So you be real with me.
And let's see if we're
on the same page.
Yeah.
If we're not.
Let's not waste each other's time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No more game playing.
No more game playing.
No more
Kissing mixed signals.
Yeah, mixed signals. Just be upfront.
Yeah.
And honest.
And if your expectations and needs don't align.
Yeah, and you know what?
It's okay.
Move on.
You move on, and that's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It's better to know sooner rather than later.
It's like ripping off the Band-Aid.
Ripping off the Band-Aid. It might sting a little.
It might sting for a minute, but
then it's done.
Then it's done. You can heal.
You can heal.
Yeah, heal.
And move on.
Okay, so communication.
Communication.
About honesty.
Honesty.
From the beginning.
From day one.
So listeners, what are you thinking?
What are your thoughts?
What has resonated with you so far?
Yeah. What are your takeaways from this conversation?
Take a moment to reflect on what we've talked about.
Yes.
And we'll be back in a few minutes.
To wrap it all up.
To wrap it all up and give you some final thoughts. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive, everybody. We've talked about the reasons why someone might say they're not ready.
The emotional fallout.
The emotional fallout, the strategies.
Yeah, how to deal with it.
For dealing with it, and even how to prevent it from happening.
Potentially. So much good stuff.
I think one of the biggest takeaways, for me at least, is just...
communication is key.
Yeah, open, honest, respectful communication.
Yes. It's like the foundation.
The foundation of any good relationship.
Of everything.
Really.
And it's not just about talking right.
No, it's about listening.
It's about really hearing
what the other person is saying.
Yeah, and trying to understand their perspective.
And asking those clarifying questions, help me understand why you're feeling this way.
Yeah.
What's going on for you?
And I feel like that can go a long way.
Oh, absolutely.
Even if it's a tough conversation.
It's not always easy.
No.
But it's so important.
Yeah. And the article also talked a lot about boundaries.
Boundaries are huge.
Yeah, respecting their boundaries and
yours.
And honoring our own.
Yeah.
And again, it goes back to communication.
Absolutely.
You have to be able to articulate what your boundaries are.
And be open to hearing theirs.
Yeah. And if someone's not respecting your boundaries...
that's a red flag.
That's a big red flag.
Yeah.
And same goes for you.
Yeah.
If you're not respecting their boundaries... that's not a good sign.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about responding to that not ready statement.
Right.
But the article also gave us some really good preventative measures.
Yeah, how to prevent it in the first place.
From even happening.
And it all comes back to...
honesty.
Honesty.
Right from the start.
From the very beginning.
Yeah. Date one.
No more games.
No more games.
No more, be real. Be real with yourself and with the other person.
Authenticity.
And it can be scary.
It is scary.
To be that vulnerable right off the bat.
But it's worth it.
Because
they're not wasting time.
You're not wasting time.
They're not wasting energy.
And you're being true to yourself.
Exactly.
And at the end of the day...
that's what matters.
That's what matters.
Yeah.
So
wrap things up.
Yeah, as we kind of bring this deep dive to a close.
Yes.
Remember that hearing, I'm not ready.
Doesn't have to be the end of the world.
It's not a rejection.
It's an opportunity.
Yeah. It's a chance for understanding.
Growth.
For growth and maybe even...
a stronger connection.
Yeah, down the line.
Down the line.
So listeners, we encourage you to check out the full article.
Yes.
All the resources are listed there.
And let us know your thoughts.
Yeah, if you've been through this.
Share your stories.
Share your stories.
We'd love to hear from you.
And if there's any topics that you want us to deep dive into.
Yeah.
Send them our way.
Hit us up.
Okay. Until next time, happy navigating.
See you later.